Guje Borgesson's petition was raised because she did not accept that her daughter Annie had died accidentally or committed suicide. Guje believes that Annie may have been the victim of foul play because there was no evidence that she had contemplated or committed suicide. In fact, the evidence suggested that just before her death, she was threatened by an unidentified man. Guje Borgesson cannot demand that the authorities solve the mystery of her daughter's death, but she has every right to expect them to try, and she is convinced that they haven't. Of course, if Guje lived in Scotland, she could raise her concerns with her elected representative, as the Harris family of Dundee did with John McCallion, a previous convener of this committee. John McCallion championed their cause because he too doubted the authorities' conclusion that the Harris' son, who was found dead with serious head injuries, had died by accident. John McCallion made a speech about this in Parliament, and it struck me that there were many similarities between the cases of the Harris and Borgesson cases. Both deaths were said by Strathclyde police to have been accidental. Both cases had no corroborating evidence to indicate accident or suicide. In fact, the opposite. Both victims had unexplained injuries and other anomalies. Both bereaved families were refused fatal accident inquiries. Both bereaved families had their loved ones' bodies returned in shocking and distressing states. Both bereaved families spent fruitless years trying to prise information from the authorities before enlisting the help of investigative journalists. Both cases attracted widespread media attention. The Harris case spawned a TV documentary, and the Borgesson case is to be the subject of a similar film. And of course, last but not least, both cases attracted an outpouring of public concern that ended in Parliament. The Harris case at Westminster and the Borgesson case, with over 3,000 supporting signatures from 57 different countries, here at Holyrood. Since Annie's death, Guje Borgesson travels to Scotland at least once a year, acting as a sort of Swedish Miss Marples, trying to glean information from the authorities and speak to people who knew her daughter in the hope that this can shed light on her death. This is a sad indictment on our country's reputation and must be detrimental to Mrs Borgesson's health, safety and sanity. Finally, I think that both cases and the other two cases referred to by the petitioner endorse, Eilish Angiolini's call for a Crown Counsel-led team of highly trained specialists to investigate complex deaths. This, she says, will reassure the nearest relatives and the public that the circumstances of a death have been fully and timeously investigated. This public confidence is currently lacking, as evidenced by this petition. I would stress that these are my observations on the Borgesson case, and I was only asked to comment at the last minute. So
we're grateful to you for
I'll answer any questions I can.
Thanks very much. Questions? Yes.
Welcome. I have to say that I have met Guje Borgesson a couple of times. I previously worked for Aileen Campbell MSP, and it was clear to see that you know, she has suffered greatly since the death of her daughter. But I just wanted to pick up on something that she said in the petition. She said that questions regarding the investigation posed to Strathclyde Police by MSP Aileen Campbell have not been replied to. Myself and Aileen Campbell had a 3.5-hour meeting with senior police officers and went into absolutely every detail of it and passed on the answers, and you know, I can't say any more than that. I don't, unless something has happened since then and there have been further questions, but we certainly were satisfied that all the questions had been answered. Having said that, these were particularly difficult circumstances because, you know, Mrs Borgesson lives in Sweden. Her daughter died here, and she felt that it hadn't been, you know, she felt that it hadn't been fully investigated. And it must be incredibly difficult to come to terms with what happened to her. My question really is, how much further do you take it? Is there a danger that if you have the fatal accident inquiry and that you still think there is more to be explored, and then you have a further review, what happens if that review says there's nothing more to be explored? I'm only using this case as an example because it's been going on for years and years, and many MSPs, many police officers, many journalists have been looking into it. Is there a danger that we just keep on reviewing and reviewing and reviewing?
Well, of course, there is that danger. But I would have to say that she hasn't got past the first hurdle. She hasn't got past the state of having a fatal accident inquiry. And if the Lord Advocate, Mrs Angelini, sees the need for a Crown Counsel-led team of highly trained specialists to investigate just such complex deaths, then I say that yes, there is something in that, and the Lord Advocate must also realise that the public don't have confidence that this is always done timeously and thoroughly. And I think that's just common sense. I think the ordinary Bobby on the beat, who we have all respect for them and the difficult jobs they do, they're only ordinary people. They've got pressure of work, and maybe they just can't identify the things that this specialist team might be able to. But I drew the comparison between the Billy Harris case, which was taken up by a past convener, a very well-respected past convener of this committee, because looking at the Borgesson case as an observer, as I do, I get the impression that some people think that this is just a grief-stricken mother, a middle-aged lady who can't see any wrong in her daughter and couldn't believe that she would take her own life. And I don't think that's the case. She's an intelligent, resourceful woman. And yes, she will keep going on until she's satisfied she's getting at least attempts made to find out what happened to her daughter. But right from the word go, she hasn't had that. She's come up against officialdom in Scotland, and again, this is why I brought John McCallion's case into it. Mrs Borgesson can be dismissed easily as an emotive mother. John McCallion found exactly the same thing with the same police force, and worse with one of his constituents, who he wasn't related to, so he was a dispassionate observer and came across exactly this. And I would recommend that you read John McCallion's speech. It's in Hansard. He gave it in 1993 on the 16th of March. He saw the grief that this had caused this family. So it's not fanciful to say that some of what Mrs Borgesson says is true. I know for a fact she had to camp, sit down, have a sit-down protest in Kilmarnock Police Station, and if you dealt with her, you'll probably know that's the case, to find out information about her daughter. And I think it reflects badly on us as a nation that a foreigner coming to this country who's lost her daughter, who adopted this country, is treated in this manner. Mrs Borgesson probably, again, as you'll know, speaks very highly of the help and warmth and assistance she's had from the ordinary people in this country. But coming up against officialdom, she's not got much good to say, and that, I think, I made a judgment that she is not a neurotic mother that sees conspiracies or anything about her poor daughter. I think she's a reasonable, intelligent woman, and I think that examining her case once, you asked, getting right back to your question, how long does this go on? Well, once would be a start in this case.
Just to come back on that, I mean, not to focus on Guje Borgesson as an individual, but I mean, I think really the question was, yes, I understand she didn't get a fatal accident inquiry. Just on the wider, issue, when, there are people who will never accept that, and they will want another investigation and another investigation and another investigation. I suppose I'm really just asking you, how many investigations does it take? I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I'm just asking, is there a danger that we just keep on reviewing and reviewing and reviewing?
But then one would be a start in this case.
Mm-hmm. In this
one
case,
would be a
we're
start.
looking at the wider context.
On the wider context, I suppose, till you get to the truth. And of course, there are going to be disingenuous people. There are going to be people who, maybe convicted of a crime, will want it re-examined and re-examined, not because they didn't do the crime, not because they might want to make capital of that. But I think this specialist team that Felix Angelini envisages surely would have the wit and the wisdom to be able to sort the wheat from the chaff. And in Mrs Borgesson's case, I think it's undeniable that she is not the chaff, she is the real McCoy. And I mean, her daughter's body was brought home to Sweden with her waist-length hair hacked off in a poor condition. But it wasn't as bad as the Harris family, whose son's body lay for 42 days at room temperature in the custody of Strathclyde Police, and then was sent home in a disinfected body bag that the parents couldn't even look at, couldn't even see their son. And that's why I brought John McCallion into it, to show you that this woman's grief and her experiences are not fanciful.
No, are there any other questions before we decide what to do? Okay, can I have suggestions then about how we proceed with this particular petition? Yes.
Obviously, a disturbing case, and according to Mr Minogue's response to my colleague Anne McLaughlin, this may, what I'm about to suggest may or may not give closure. Who can tell that? But what I think we should do at bare minimum, convener, is to write to the Scottish Government and to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service and ask a number of questions. Firstly, what is their response to the petition? And to get that on the record. Secondly, will the new Specialist Deaths Unit be able to investigate cases of suspicious deaths as referred to in the petition? And if not, why not? And then, perhaps just for the government itself, we could ask it when it would respond to, or when it will respond to the recommendations made by Lord Cullen in his report on the fatal accident inquiry legislation. I think those would be reasonable first steps to take in relation to this petition.
Is the committee in agreement with this?
Say in relation to Bill Butler's point there that I think if you ask any group who self-regulate, have they made a mistake or have they done enough? I think generally the answer is going to be we've done everything. And I think maybe that's what Eilish Angelini sees as well with the specialist unit. That unit wouldn't be the one that necessarily were involved in the original investigation, and they could look at it in a different way. But if you ask people, have you done enough in this case, the people who have said, yes, already we've done enough, are going to say again, yes, we've done enough. We've looked at it always.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I mean, Mr Minogue, you make a fair point that is always a danger. However, I think what the committee I'm suggesting should do is correct in that we'll get a response back. That's if my colleagues agree. We'll get responses back, and then we will do what we are paid to do, and that is to exercise our judgment and to see what we think of it. Because when people say, yes, we've done all that we did all that we could do, sometimes the way they say it leads to further questions. Wouldn't you agree?
And if you read Hansard, you'll see that John McCallion alludes to the fact that Strathclyde Police said for the year that Billy Harris was died that they have no unsolved murders. And I think the implication there is that there are pressures on the police not to have murder cases on their hands. And it's sometimes easier to say, as in the case of Billy Harris, this chap fell backwards 5 times, striking his head in the same place 5 times, got up again, even though he was very drunk, and it was an accident, rather than say somebody beat him about the head 5 times with an object in the same place. So there are pressures on the body that does the original investigation, and that's undeniable.
I hear what the witness is saying, but I think we'll have a go nevertheless.
The committee has agreed with those proposals. Thanks very much. So the option to continue is being taken forward. Thank you very much.